He had to face the fact that he had a child that was raised by somebody else, that he missed my whole life. One of his first words to me was, "My decisions altered the course of your mother's life." He owned it all. He was very angry for a while. His wife shared with me later, he was very distraught.
Who am I?
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 This is Who Am I, Really? A podcast about adoptees that have located and connected with their biological family members. I'm Damon Davis, and you're going to meet Sharla, who called me from West Texas. Sharla grew up never wanting to find her birth family, but in truth, she knows she was suppressing that feeling. After a DNA test, Sharla finally figured out she had made a paternal connection, but she didn't realize how close she had actually come to meeting her birth father. Unfortunately, Sharla has gotten mixed signals from her birth mother, and now the woman has left her with negative comments, but Sharla refuses to let her negativity drag her down. This is Sharla's journey. Sharla was born in Odessa, Texas, but she grew up about an hour to the east. She said her adoption was a private placement through a county children's home. As far as she knows, she may have been in the hospital nursery for nearly a week after her parents were notified she was born. The couple, who already had a son 9 years older than her, were not ready for a newborn to join their home. So there was a scramble to buy a crib, girls' baby clothes, and all of the necessities their new baby girl would need before they took the drive nearly an hour both ways to pick her up. Sharla said she and her brother have never had a conversation about those early days in their family when she was adopted. She's always known she was adopted, and her mother said that was never a fact that they ever would have kept from her. Sharla said her family was not well off when she came home to live with them. Her adoptive father worked 2 jobs as his wife stayed home to care for the children.
So my father had to go to the bank to ask for a loan to help just have the things that I needed. And it wasn't to pay for my adoption. The way the county children's home worked, and I've seen the papers, the letters back and forth, the county paid for my birth mother's time in the hospital, and then they paid the doctor to deliver me, and then they paid for my birth certificate. So all that they required, so to speak, was a reimbursement to the county for those incurred expenses that they paid for on my behalf. But other than that, there were no like fees or anything like that. So it was,
Really?
yes, $499.
That is so fascinating. But what I think I heard you say was that parents were expected to repay that back to the county. Is that
Yes,
correct?
to the county, but for nothing else, not for hours spent for staff or anything like that.
Right.
And I really think, and what do I know? I've not ever looked into it or anything. I've never even driven to this county home. We have a county home here in the city where I live in Texas. So I guess if I really wanted to know, I could call and talk to them. But
Yeah.
this was in the late 60s. And I feel like under the circumstances, if they couldn't have gotten a loan or they couldn't have come up with the money, I don't see that it would be a deal breaker where they would say, well, no, you can't have this child, because they had gone through an extensive background check. They had done home visits. They had social workers that came to the home, met with my parents.
Yeah, the county sounds like they were most interested in making sure that children found a home, not necessarily in a profit model of,
Not in any
yeah,
way.
that makes sense.
I will say, back to the money part, they did have to hire a lawyer to help legalize the adoption. It was $120. They did not have $120. So my parents asked him can we predate 12 checks for $10 a month? And he said, you absolutely can.
Wow.
And some things, my dad gets very emotional about it, but he just says, I I just knew after all that happened. I think he wasn't quite sure about all this. My mother loves children. She I don't think it was just that she wanted to be a mother. She was already a mother. I think that she wanted the opportunity to help a child. And I think my dad was like, he's made little hints in the past, like, I wasn't quite sure what I thought about that. And I can understand that
What do you mean by that?
it was a closed adoption. They knew they had a paper that the county home had done an interview with my birth mother, and they had a non-identifying paper that gave information and physical traits about her parents, and her siblings. That was about 3/4 of the paper. And then the bottom fourth of the paper, which wasn't much information about my biological father. So this is all they had. And so I think, and give him props for being honest, I think my dad was just, yeah, and he didn't ever share this with me as a child. He's only talked to me about this recently. But I think as a man, as a father, I think they knew nothing. They knew nothing about these people. And I think his first instinct was to protect my mom and my brother, if that makes sense. But I don't think it took long. I think the day they walked out of that county home with me, and my parents have said, I wasn't wearing any clothes. I just had a diaper and wrapped in a blanket, and they handed
Wow.
me to them. I know. And I'm saying, as we've talked more about this in the last 5 years, I said, where were my grandparents? Where are the pictures? And I just think it all happened so fast, and
Yeah.
things were so different then. I don't think it took that long for him to decide. Well, I don't even think it was a conscious decision he made. I think the minute he saw me, I was his daughter.
So tell me about your relationship with your adoptive parents. How did you all get along in your family?
Well, I favor my mother and my brother. My mom is a petite woman, and I am petite, and she's blonde, and my brother, their son, was blonde. And so it never would have been obvious to anybody really if they hadn't known. So I think that was probably to my benefit. But my dad is a very big man in stature and in personality. So he just always loved to say, oh, you take after me. You take after me. In fact, several years ago, my mom had to have a pretty serious surgery. And he was talking to my brother on the phone. And after they got off the phone, I said, Dad, why is it that no matter what the situation, Mom will listen to whatever my brother says is gospel law? And she's never been so much with me that way. I think part of it is my husband says, I'm always going to be the baby. Like, she's always going to see me that way. No matter how old I am, she's always going to see me that way. And he just looks at me and he said, well, that's because he's her son. And I said, well, he's your son too. And he goes, he's her son. You're my daughter.
You guys, the connectivity between you.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So I would say that I had a typical childhood, very normal.
Yeah. Sounds like everything was
just,
copacetic, you guys. And
yeah,
what's interesting about this too is I've spoken a lot about what the relationship between moms and sons and fathers and daughters is. And you basically just exemplified exactly what I've been saying to people, that frequently sons connect with moms, partially because the son wants to be a man, but there's already a man in the house. And daughters want to be a woman, but there's already a woman in the house. So you end up connecting with the person that you're not really competing with.
So,
Adding in this piece of being adopted,
yes,
and there's who attaches to the child as well, right? And
yes,
so whether she would be able to admit it or not, a piece of it could be my son came from my body. You're my daughter, but
yes.
I gave birth to that guy. And so there's just naturally, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you want to admit it or not, there is naturally a slightly deeper connection to someone who's genetically related to you. And so it could be a piece of that as well.
Now she would adamantly argue with you, and
Oh,
she would say there is no difference to her in her mind, that she never thinks of it that way. And I don't think she would be in any way trying to be dishonest. That is really how she views
I
it,
agree. Yeah,
right?
I think I do believe there are parents out there where my child is my child, and it doesn't matter if they
Yes.
landed in a meteor like Superman, they're my kid. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I
Yes.
get that, and I agree, I appreciate that because there's an open-heartedness to an individual
Yes.
who takes in everybody, no matter how they come to you, and that's amazing. I still
So
think though that there is a natural connection that one cannot deny.
there's probably some truth to that.
Yeah, this
Um,
is what it is.
yeah, it is what it is. And he's the oldest.
Mm,
And they had a connection for a really long time before I came along. And
yeah, 9
truly,
years.
and she could have biological children, but there were some serious complications when he was born. And I think she came close to dying, and they had to take him by cesarean in a time that wasn't, this was in the 50s.
Right.
And I think the doctors just told my father that you could be putting her and your child at serious risk if you were to have any more biological children. But I just think when I hit my teen years, when I was around 11 or 12, I think it was a real hard thing for her, which I think is pretty normal anyway, mother daughter relationships, that I think she began to feel like I didn't need her as much anymore. And it was really, really hard for her. And so during that time, and I wasn't a real rebellious kid, I'm a huge people pleaser. Yes. And I don't want anyone to be upset with me. Anyone, if I perceive that somebody might not like me, which my husband, we've been together for 38 years, and he'll say, I just can't get that. Who could not like you? And why would you ever think that? And I know that he means that,
Yeah.
but how do you get that out of there? But I just took on this role of feeling like it was my job. No one ever assigned that job to me. I probably took that on myself, but I just always felt and still do feel that it's my job to keep the peace. It's my job to make sure everybody's happy. And if they're not happy, it must be something I didn't do right. And so I was not a really rebellious kid. I took piano lessons and was a naturally gifted in that. And my parents really latched on to that because that was not something that would have been afforded to them. And even if it had have been, they wouldn't have had the talent to do so. And so I did that, and I didn't want anyone to be upset with me. I didn't want anyone to be disappointed with me. I was just always trying to make sure everybody liked me, which I did not know could be possibly related to not only my DNA, because you cannot discount your DNA,
Right.
but just that part of being an adoptee.
Mhm.
And I also, when I was younger, I would have night terrors. And I have vivid memories of waking up in the middle of the night, the lights on, my parents are leaning over me, Sharla, what's the matter? What's wrong? Have no idea.
Hmm.
Couldn't tell you what I was dreaming about, but I would scream in my sleep. I would cry in my sleep. This went on for a very long time. And when I was in school, I have vivid memories of being in the first grade, and I liked school. But my mom would get ready to leave me, and I would cry and cry and cry.
Really? Hmm.
Yes. And she would get really upset, and she would say, Sharla, you have got to stop this crying. Your dad leaves for work and he knows that you're crying and he's worried about you all day. And then it's really hard for me to leave because I'm worried about you and you're upsetting your teacher and you're upsetting the other kids. And I had a wonderful teacher as well. And she would say, Charlotte, could you please go stand outside the door? I mean, I was upsetting the other kids. Oh,
Really?
and
Even
yeah.
as the day got on, you hadn't calmed down, really.
And as the day went on, I think I would get better. I'm a very relational and very social person.
Sure.
So what that says to me at the age that I'm at and the relationships that I have was that I couldn't help it. It wasn't a decision that I was making because the last thing I wanted to do was be away from my friends or to upset people. I also had a terrible habit of chewing my fingernails, and I would chew them and chew them and chew the quick and make them bleed. And my mom and dad tried everything to get me to stop doing those things. And now on the other side of those things, and I think even they in their age, they're in their late 80s, realize those were just nervous, anxious behaviors that I don't know. I should ask them. Did they wonder why I was doing that?
Yeah.
And probably laid awake at night and talked about where is this coming from and what's wrong, or maybe not. That generation
No.
also tended to they just push on and persevere and don't always address issues.
Yeah,
So,
but you're a parent, right? And so you
yeah,
know that there's a difference in what your children know you're talking about and what your pillow
mhm,
talk is that they don't know you're talking about, right? When the child
mhm,
does something, you may
yes,
address it in the moment and it seems like you're powering through, but in fact, in the off scene, off stage, you and your spouse are saying, "Why does he do that? I can't believe that happened. I wonder if it's this." Da, 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 da. And so these night terrors, this crying at school, this biting the nails down to the point of bleeding, that's not something parents don't discuss. So I promise you that while it may have seemed outwardly that they were trying to make it appear that they were just pushing through, they were definitely talking about this because those are the kinds of things that worry a parent about how their child is developing. So, and what's so interesting, you said you don't know where you were for 5 days,
mhm.
and you think you were in the hospital.
I'm pretty
Well,
sure I was in the hospital nursery. Yes.
yeah, but if you're the trauma response to being born potentially not comforted in the first minute, let alone hour or 5 days, leaves you possibly there crying by yourself. I don't know. You may
Mhm.
have been held in this nursery. You might not have. And so maybe all you knew was crying and discomfort. In which case, in those first 5 days, it's possible that that got ingrained at that time. Who knows? This is speculation, but you can
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying.
I do. Yes. In fact, what's really interesting, my mom has always talked about what a great baby I was. I
Mm,
was such a great baby.
mm,
And she, not too long, I think, after they brought me home, I can remember even when I was younger that there was a social worker that was responsible for my case. And they were, let me tell you, they did parts of this right. They were on it.
mm.
They came regularly, and my parents didn't always know when they were coming.
Spot checks.
Yes, and my mom said one time, and give them man, I'm impressed. This was a 50-minute drive one way. And my mom shared with me that when she saw her coming up the walk, she just panicked because the house wasn't overly tidy, and she just thought, "Oh, what's she going to think of us as parents?" And she said, she looked at her and said, "I'd be more concerned if your house was perfect. Like the fact that it's not, and there's bottles in the sink, and there's this and there's that, tells me you're taking care of her. You're
Yeah.
taking care of your child.
You're living the parental life.
Your child, yes."
Yeah.
So she said they got sick, and I was maybe 4 or 5 months old. I'm not quite sure how old I was. And then they were worried that they would give me, I think it was a stomach thing. They were worried that they would give me this stomach thing. And so my mom said she would put something over her face, and she would come in and give me my bottle and then to take care of me, but left me in the crib because all three of them were sick. And my grandparents didn't live close to be able to come and help. And apparently, even before that, I was such a good baby. I never cried.
Interesting.
And my grandmother, my dad's mother, made my mom so mad because she would tell her, "This is not normal. Sharla, this is not normal behavior. Like, she never cries, and it's not normal for a baby to never cry. And I'm very concerned about that." And it would make my mom, mother-in-law anyway, daughter-in-law,
For sure. Oh, yeah.
but in my
Natural.
grandmother's mind, they loved me, and they did want me to be okay. And they do have this child that's been placed in their arms, and they know nothing about my family, and they know nothing about my background, and they don't know anything about anything. And my grandmother, who has had 3 children and who has at that point had 4 or 5 grandchildren, is thinking, "This is not normal behavior."
No. Yeah. This child is devoid of some of the normal expressions of
She
emotion.
should be crying. Like, you don't just say she's just a good baby. And
Yeah.
I don't want to read anything into anything. And I tend to have a positive vibe about me anyway. But it has been really interesting in the last 5 years as I have read stories by adoptees or by birth mothers, and I've gotten interested in listening to podcasts and learning more. I have begun to think, wow. And I don't mean this in a negative way at all. I am not a negative person, and I certainly don't ever want to give a negativity associated with adoption, even though I know there are some negative aspects. But I think for the first time, I realized, how can a child, a newborn, be separated from their mother and not have some kinds of responses to that, even though they're an infant and they're in a loving environment and they're loved? It's just a natural thing. And a child being separated from their mother is unnatural. And so I've just developed this attitude that, did that play into some things in my life? Yes. Did that have some negative effects on me? Without a doubt. Did it cause probably some of the fears that I couldn't verbalize as a child, that I didn't know what the impetus was? Most likely.
I mean, that's not money, right?
Right? But it also, on the other side of that, I believe helped me develop parts of my personality that, had I been raised with my biological family, might not ever have emerged or might not ever have existed. And so, as with life, because whether you're born in your biological family and raised by your biological family, or you are brought into another family and raised in another family, no family is perfect. And every family is going to have their function and their dysfunction.
Yep.
And so I feel very grateful, which I know can be a no words with adoption. More so like, don't tell me to be grateful. So
Yes.
I'm expressing that in my own gratitude, not because someone's over here telling me to say it.
Yep.
If that makes sense. I'm grateful that I believe it helped shape me into the person that I am. And had I actually shared this with my mother the last time I was home to visit, because they know they know everything. I've shared everything with them that I know now about my biological family. And I just said to her, Mom, you probably know this, but I'm an affirming person and I want to tell you, if by some choice of the universe I was given the chance to go back in my life and go back to the day I was born and I could choose, I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't want any other choice. And that's saying a lot because I have connected and am in reunion with my biological family, and they are very good people, and I love them and they love me. But I have come to a place, probably I came to this place a long time ago, where I'm okay with that. And I don't wish it to be any different. I've had ups and downs. I've had some really hard struggles in my life, but none of us can avoid those things. If I hadn't had the struggles in this life that I've had, and I had been raised by my biological family, I would have just had different struggles probably. So different doesn't mean better. And I think sometimes we can get into that little trap as
Wishing
adoptees.
for what
Or,
could have been. Yeah.
yes, the what ifs and, well, if I'd had this, then this. And I'm meeting these people now in their mature stages of life as well,
Yeah.
where I have grown, well, so have they.
Yeah.
So they aren't the same people that they were.
Of course, I was curious about what made Sharla want to find her birth family, but she said she never had an urge to search. She had a wonderful life, so Sharla never craved any answers. But she also said she didn't want to hurt her family if she did seek adoption reunion. Another concern of hers was if she found her biological family, but they had not told anyone about her, that she might disrupt their lives. For someone who never wanted to search, it sure sounds like she had thought through all of the possibilities, doesn't it?
For me, when you don't think that something is a possibility, you convince yourself that it's not important. And you convince yourself that it doesn't matter because it can't matter because there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
Absolutely nothing.
But I
So,
heard the contradiction in what you were saying. Your
yes.
whole life you said, I don't want to do it,
Yeah.
but in the like these two thoughts are moving in the opposite direction. But
Yeah.
if I did, I wouldn't want to disrupt anything. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
wouldn't want to hurt anybody, and
yeah,
I wouldn't want, and I'm a people pleaser, and I would never want to hurt my parents or make them think that they weren't enough. And I really thought it wasn't something that I thought much about, but I came across some journals and books from when I was in junior high, and it was one of those, what happened in this year, and what was the popular music, and what do I remember about this class, and that kind of thing. What was my favorite book? And it said the biggest problem I had to solve this year. Okay, so I was in the 8th grade. So, yeah, 13, 14, and I wrote being adopted. And
really.
yeah, and I wouldn't have said that. Like if someone had said, okay, I've got this piece of paper. What do you think you wrote? I would not have thought that. So I obviously did think about it more than I thought I did. And then it said, how did I solve this problem? And I wrote by not thinking about it.
I'm so glad you said this because,
Really?
yes, because I have said more than once. Now, recognize this platform here, a podcast where I'm interviewing adoptees. This is a place where an adoptee has come forward to say, I want to tell my story. But there's a whole bunch of folks like your former self who have some long lost thought about being adoption, but
Mhm.
they will, if you stand face to face with them, you meet them at a cocktail party and you talk about adoption, they'll say, oh, I don't need to find my biological parents, because they too have probably pushed it down. And so I've interviewed 260 plus people on this show, but there are millions of adoptees out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so just that disparity in how many people are stepping forward to being on podcasts versus how
Mm-hmm.
many adoptees are out there
Yeah.
tells you, in my opinion, the ratio of folks who are not necessarily in a place of wanting to talk about their adoption. Maybe they haven't been through reunion, whatever. The ratio is not exact, but you understand my point.
I
The
understand.
proportion of vocal people is significantly less than the number of people who could potentially have something to say. And I think it's because a lot of them are pushing down still.
Well, I think we don't want to. I'm just going to say it. You know what I'm going to say. We don't want to look ungrateful. We don't want to look like we are making ourselves into victims.
Sharla said she was busy living life after training to become a teacher, loving being a mother to her 2 kids, and managing life without much of a support network when her husband was traveling for work. In 2017, Sharla's husband thought it would be fun to give her a 23andMe DNA kit for her birthday. Sharla had no idea what it was nor what it had the power to reveal. Her husband explained she just had to provide a saliva sample, and based on the population of samples, she could learn more about her ancestral and health history. Sharla thought it sounded interesting, so she convinced her husband to do a test too. In the non-identifying information her birth mother shared with the county children's home, she revealed that her own mother, Sharla's maternal grandmother, was British, and her paternal grandfather was an American she had met during the war. Born and raised in Texas, Sharla had a hard time fully believing she had British ancestry.
Didn't know if this was true or not. Well, the results of my ancestry test did indicate that that part of what she had shared was true because my British number was around 70%. So we got a really big laugh about that and got a good
It's pretty
tickle.
hysterical as I sit here listening to this West
Yes,
Texas
yes.
twang.
My
To
husband
know
said,
that you are of British
"Oh,
descent is
yeah."
hilarious to me.
Well, let me tell you what's not just funny, but a bit mind blowing to me now on the other side of it. Our daughter has been obsessed with all things British since she could even communicate that. And that did not come from me in any way, bringing that up or fostering that. I mean, the girl is crazy about it. She wanted some Union Jack with the UK flag on her high tops. She wanted a rug that looked like, I mean, that has been her goal her whole life, was to go to
Mm.
the UK. So when we got all this back and we learned all the truth of it, she was like, "Really?"
Wow, that's wild. That is incredible.
Then if you go
Uh,
to her house, like she has a painting of Big Ben, she has a whole wall of different things she's collected. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Incredible. Wow, that's really fascinating.
Well, what's in you is in you.
Great.
So
That's great.
so we got the results back, and we had no idea that it connected us to family. Like the little tab up at the
Uh,
top that says DNA relatives or whatever. Never looked at them, never paid any attention to them.
Occasionally, Sharla got emails about connections to distant relatives, third cousins and such, but she admits she didn't understand centimorgans, the units used to measure our genetic linkages, and never clicked any additional links. In 2019, Sharla arrived home after a long day at school, and her husband was in their home office. He asked if she had seen an email from 23andMe that said she had a high probability match for a first cousin who was also born in the 1950s. Sharla blew it off because it didn't make sense that it was so easy to find another person whose parents were siblings with her own birth parent. While she had put together the logic of this person's close proximity to her on the family tree, she blew it off at the same time. About a week later, Sharla's husband asked her what she was going to do about the family tree information she had received.
I said, "I'm not going to do anything." I said, "What's the matter with you? You've always said this is not something you would want me to do because he's my husband. He's protective of me. He knows how sensitive and deep feeling I am. And if someone were to reject me. He just knew how hard that would be for me, and he wanted to protect me from that. And he said, well, but this seems safe. It's not like you're going to be face to face with this person, or you could talk to them through 23andMe and they wouldn't even have to know anything. You can say as much or as little as you want. I said, is this something you think I should do? What do you think I should do? And he said, I think if you could go into it with an attitude of, if they reply, great. If they don't, great. Then I think this is something you should consider. I really do. And I talked to my kids about it, and they just want me to be happy. So essentially, they said, well, Mom, you didn't really go looking for this. So we find this very interesting that this has come to you. We'll pray about it with you. And if you get a peace about it, then we think it's something you should do. So that's what I did. And I just sent a very benign email. And all I said was, I just saw that we got this match. I did this test 3 years ago. I wonder how we're related. And I didn't hear anything back for a while. And so I didn't really think anything of it. And then I got the emails from her, and it was one right after another. And she was so excited.
Really?
Yes. And she was like, I come from a very large family. It gives me chills just really telling you. I know who all my cousins are. I know who all my family are. We all know each other. How do I not know who you are? And I thought, well, girl,
Let me tell you a story.
As an adoptee, you think, all right, get ready, because this is the thing that people run away from. She's going to shut this down. But I was okay with it. If she did that, I really was, because I didn't go into this looking for anything. So I just said, I don't know. I was placed for adoption through a county children's home. And I told her where, and it was a closed adoption, and I don't have any names, and I don't know anything about my family. And she just, I have to know how we're related. This is so wonderful. She felt this protection of me immediately. I have one living uncle left. Do you care if I reach out to him? He and his wife they're the ones who know all about the family, and they have all the pictures and everything. And I said, sure, I don't mind at all. Thank you for asking. And she just kept saying adamantly, we had dysfunction in our family, but it wouldn't have mattered. There's no way anyone in this family would have voluntarily relinquished their child. And I said, well, you just don't know. I do know, she said. It would not have mattered the circumstances. And she held on to that. So eventually, my uncle's wife sent me a message, and she said, we've just heard from our niece about this connection, and we don't know how you are related to us. He had 4 older brothers, and he had 2 sisters, and only he and his younger sister were still living. Everyone else was deceased. And she was just, it doesn't matter. Welcome to our family. We look forward to getting to know you. Their father had an affair, and a daughter was born from that situation. And so I think at first they thought maybe that's how I was related to them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? There were 7 children, there were 7 siblings, but there was a half sister through the grandfather.
So they thought you might be in that older tier.
Yeah, from an older child that they weren't raised with, and they didn't even know anything about her until she was older.
Right. So your paternal grandfather had an affair. So
Yeah.
they thought that you were, got it. I'm with you.
I was related to, like, who would be their half aunt,
Yes.
because they couldn't in their mind see the other 7. Now, it was that they were from 1932 to 1949, I believe. So she just couldn't in her mind. She knew these other 6 people, these 6 aunts and uncles, and she was just saying, there's no way. It
Right.
wouldn't matter what the circumstances were. So they're thinking it's this woman that really wasn't a part of the family that they all found out about much later. That wasn't the case at all. And when word started getting out a little bit about me, many of them were just excited. And my husband and I were like, what is happening here? These people are just, they want to know me. They wanted to know how I was related to them. And one of my cousins said, we watched how our parents treated their half sister, and we're not going to be like that.
Oh, wow.
And one of my cousins on that side of the family is an adoptee. One of
Hmm.
my cousins has 2 biological children and also an adopted daughter. And so I just think they just viewed all this very differently than other people would view it.
It wasn't clear to Sharla and her husband if these were maternal or paternal connections. Back in her non identifying information, her birth mother also revealed that she had lost a younger sister to cancer when that young lady was 17 years old. Texas holds comprehensive documentation from birth through marriage and divorce to death records, so finding someone who died of cancer at 17 years old wouldn't be very hard. After some research, they were able to triangulate that the cousin Sharla was connected to was actually on her paternal side. With final clarity on their connection, Sharla's cousin was super excited to meet her. But Texas is a huge state, and the woman lived down in San Antonio. The other family members were in East Texas, and Sharla lived in the West.
She said, you just pick the closest place to you and we'll come to you. So about 4 months after all this happened over spring break, that's what I did. And we all got together and we met and we just, immediately just had this amazing connection. Unbeknownst to me, my husband is standing behind this reunion with a mouth agape, thinking to himself, well, if we didn't know for sure, there's no denying it. Because
Really?
we all favor each other very much so. Walked away from that. It was so wonderful to meet my uncle and his wife and my cousins, and now more families hearing about me. Well, a bunch of them all decide they want to take a test because they
Hmm.
want to see maybe I'm their sister or whatever. And they wanted to do ancestry, and I had not done ancestry. So my husband bought me an ancestry kit, and my uncle's wife bought him an ancestry kit for his birthday because he was kind of they're
The record family historians.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and I need to tell you the reason why my cousin took the test is because it had always been said that the great grandmother was Native American. And if you could see pictures of her, you would know where they got that from. So that's why she took it, and there was 0. And so
It's such a pervasive rumor. People want
yes,
so
yes.
badly to have Native American roots, and almost no one does.
Well, and it was always said, like it was just thought to be true. So to put that to rest, also, my aunt was thinking that'll put this to rest because he was willing and he wanted to take it and he thought it would be great. And I'd become very close to them. The test comes in. I am sitting in the living room, getting ready to go to bed. I open up my app and I just gasp. And my husband sees me looking at my phone and he's thinking something really bad has happened and what's wrong. And I say, he's my father.
Oh my God. What?
And, and he goes, well, I could have told you that.
Really?
Yes. And I said, well, I didn't know it. And I'm crying and I'm just a mess about it. And he doesn't know what to do with me, right? This was
Yeah.
not the reaction he was expecting. I finally come back in, I sit down, and he goes, I don't understand. Just telling you this, my heart is racing. I don't understand. Please explain to me why you're upset. You've met him. You have a good relationship. He's a good man. He wasn't married. He was the only brother that wasn't married at the time. You were very nervous, right? That this had all happened when they were married. He loves you. Like, what? This is great. What's wrong? And I said, he's going to be so embarrassed and he's going to be so crushed by this because he had no idea. I mean, I had shared my birth mother's name, but I don't have any recent pictures of her. And I only had a high school photo from Ancestry yearbooks. And I hadn't showed it to anyone because I had not contacted her. And I was afraid that that would be a violation of her privacy. I didn't feel like it was right to go around telling people about her and showing her picture when I hadn't even talked to her.
Yeah, you're right.
And so he just, in his mind, bless his heart, it had been 50 something years. Just was having when I was born in his brain. And he just had come to a point early on where there wasn't anybody he could think of at that time in that year. He wasn't
Yeah.
in conception time. So anyway, I just,
And here's the other thing, Sharla, is usually these things happen in the opposite order where you locate a birth mother first,
Mhm,
tells the story, and
mhm,
then when you find him, you can jog his memory because you've got the details that she shared with you that
mhm,
you conveyed to him. You didn't
mhm.
have any of that.
No,
All
no.
you had was time frame and name, and it's not enough for a person who's lived 50 years since to
Yes.
to and go back to.
Right. So I was
So is
devastated about it.
you were devastated about it. So, and this is your sort of people pleaser, putting your
Yes.
emotions on him.
Yes.
But what is so interesting about this is you have gone to meet your cousin and met her uncle, not knowing you're standing face to face with
With
your own
my father.
biological father. You had
Yes.
no idea.
No. Now, my husband said the minute they opened the door, he knew. He
Well,
knew without a doubt. And I said, well, why didn't you? And he said, I knew eventually the truth would come out and I had to let it play out the way it was supposed to play out.
That's right.
A very wise man. So
Yeah.
I
'Cause
said,
imagine the emotion that your husband could have accidentally brought to that meeting or the post, like in that meeting or right after that meeting, if he had said, I think that's the guy, that would have created a whole bunch of charge. Because if you had started to think, wow, it might be him, when the opportunity to do ancestry DNA came up, you might not have done it. You might have said, oh, I'm scared. You know what I mean? Just out
oh,
of,
yes.
so he
And
was
I,
very smart to just say, let me just see how this one goes.
yeah.
That's
Well,
a-
and I didn't know this until later, but my two cousins, who really are more like siblings to him, they're very close in age because their dad was so much older. They were like, how can you say this is not your daughter?
Really?
Look at her. Look at her mannerisms. Look at how much alike and
So so tell me, you get this ancestry DNA result, you are devastated at
yeah,
what you think his response is going to be.
yes.
What is his response? How did you reach out and what did he say?
Well, I didn't reach out. I waited till I let it be on him. And he called me and the next day and he was like, "Oh, my test results are in." And of course I knew that. And I'm having trouble trying to navigate this. And he and his wife were there. And okay, I see this, I see that. I'm walking him through and he is looking at it and reading it. And it does not register with him what he's even reading. So his wife reads it out loud. And when he hears her, it is just dead silent. And he says, I don't understand. What does this mean? Does this mean I'm your father? And I said, yes, sir. That's exactly what it means. And he said something along the lines, I mean, this has been 5 years ago, but he said, I know it's true. It says it right here, but I don't know how it's true. And then he says, well, Sharla, it doesn't change anything. I mean, we love you. We're going to always love you. He's trying to, I know immediately now he's thinking about me and he's trying very hard to be careful about what he says and not in any way cause me to feel bad. About 10 minutes after we got off the phone, his wife sent me a text and asked me if I was okay and said, we are okay. We're just surprised, but we are okay. We just want to be sure that you're all right. I said, I'm okay. So I said, do you want me to send you her picture? Because he's a good man. And I think this was all very troubling to him. Like, what kind of man doesn't remember the mother of this child that he's had that he didn't know he had?
Yeah.
And I said, I'll send you her photo. Please don't share it with anybody. And I didn't even really know if he would recognize her because it was a high school annual picture and he had met her several years after. And I sent it and he did know who she was.
Really?
So,
Wow.
if I had started with that, but I firmly believe things worked out the way they were supposed to work out. I really,
Absolutely.
really believe that.
What's really unique about how he found out is that you were on the phone with him. You're literally, it's real time. It's
Yeah.
not often that a
I,
person will say,
no,
I had to walk my biological parent through the fact that our DNA online says we are daughter,
parent child. I mean,
uh,
5 years
or daughter.
later, still, sometimes I will go to that app and I just look at that and just still seeing those words. I don't know that you ever get used to seeing that. And I don't think anybody, unless they're in our circumstance, can understand that.
Yeah.
And then he began to really struggle.
In what
He
way?
began to, well, he had to face the fact that he had a child that was raised by somebody else, that he missed my whole life. One of his first words to me was, "My decisions altered the course of your mother's life." He owned it all. He was very angry for a while. His wife shared with me later, he was very distraught about it. He was very distressed about it. I think he went through grief through this. And I had to say to him, "You're not responsible for her choices. You're only responsible for your choices. And you didn't know anything about this. So there was, and really, what was he going to do anyway? This is the 60s. He's lamented that, but his wife has said, "What were you going to do?" I mean, you've got all these years of wisdom now, and you think of what you would have done then, but what options did you have? What could you have done? I mean, my life would have changed drastically. They weren't going to get married, so it would have not been a good situation for me at all.
Sharla began to share some of her birth mother's story. The young couple had a brief relationship, and when she got pregnant, she was sent to live 8 hours away from home. Her parents knew of the pregnancy, but their family was fractured as her father and brother lived several hours from where she lived with her own mother. Sharla's birth mother and her mom didn't have a good relationship when she was pregnant. Sharla's understanding is her birth mother had a lot of hard things happen in her young life before she got pregnant. It sounded like Sharla empathized with her birth mother's story.
As a parent, as a mother of a daughter, I cannot imagine my daughter going through something like that without me there. Like when I was born, her mom didn't even come. Her sister was the one who was there, and she has shared with me everything that she remembers about them coming in, and she was there when I was born, and my mother saying, "I want to hold my baby," and they were not really so keen on that. And she said, "You let me see and hold my baby, or I will not sign the papers." We have had some communication by letter. We've never met or talked. But essentially, what she shared with me was it was just that time where mothers like me that weren't married were encouraged to do this, to give their children a stable home. It wasn't that I didn't want my child, but I did what I thought was right and the best.
May I ask, what did you feel when you learned the story of her wanting to try to hold you?
Well, I was proud of her because the way my aunt shared the story, I thought, good for you. There were parts of this that you might not have felt like you had a lot of say in, but you said, "This is my child. This is what you will do, or I will not." And so there was a part of me that was very proud of her for making what she wanted as known as she could and not taking no for an answer.
Self-empowerment.
Yes, the big whammy, so to speak, in all of this, and I say this as respectfully as I can because I don't want to disrespect her in any way, but she was in a fairly long-term relationship with someone else, and the information that was on the paper that she gave was about him. And that's why some of this was really confusing. And that's why I think my biological dad, he saw the paper and there was two things in there that matched him. And one were the parents were divorced. His parents did divorce later. And a little bit, one other little description. So this brief summary she had given of him, 90% of it didn't match.
Yeah.
So
And
this,
it frankly could have been any guy. Yeah.
And when I shared it with my aunt, she started telling me about this other man. And I was like, oh, that matches exactly the things that she said. So
Yeah.
whether no one will ever know what she really knew, like she's the only one who really even knew the truth, but we have no relationship. She did respond to me a time or two when I was having surgery, and I asked her, would you be willing to answer some medical questions? She said, I will. Here's my email. But then that wasn't helpful, Damon, because she said, you know how they give you medical questions? I just answer no to everything. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's not helpful to me if that's what you answer, because that's not accurate. But in time, I have sent her little notes or this or that, but I've never put any pressure on her or anything like that. And then about a year ago, we were in the mountains, and I often think of her when I'm there. And I sent her a very brief email and told her where we were and hoped she was good. And the response I got was not kind at all. She said, here goes. And she didn't even, Damon, like in all the other times that we had some communication, she would, hello, Sharla, or hi, Sharla, that none of that. It was, well, here goes. I don't have your address. I don't have your phone number. I don't look at I don't read anything you send me. I don't look at the pictures that you send me. To answer this email, I scroll down to the bottom and I'm typing this. When you were placed in the arms of your family, I walked out of that hospital. I put it behind me. I don't want to block you, but I will. And that was it.
Oh, Sharla. Wow.
And you know what? Let me just tell you, I'm a very much a words person. I was by myself. My husband had gone on a bike ride. And my first thought was, really? Wow. You've written me a letter in the past sharing that you didn't have a whole lot to say, and you're going to speak to me like that, and then essentially tell me to be quiet and not speak, that I'm a grown adult and I don't get to talk. Wow. Such a contradiction. And to me, that was just the sign of a person that's not a mentally healthy individual. A well-functioning, healthy adult does not speak to another adult like that, period. You just don't speak to other people that way. And my first thought after that was, I am so glad that you did not raise me. I'm a very tender-hearted, caring person. And if this is the way you speak, I'm really grateful that I was not subjected to whatever it is that you deal with, have dealt with. Why threaten to block me?
Yeah.
And in the first letter that she sent me in a response to what I had sent her, she typed it. And one of the things she said was, to this day, I still think of you. And then in the last communication from her, she said, she contradicts herself and she says, I walked out of the hospital and I put it behind me. No, you didn't. You did not. And that is part of why you are responding the way you are responding. And I have a great deal of mercy towards her. But my thing is, every one of us goes through hard things, struggles, rejections, pain. And you can choose to stay there, or you can choose to do the very best that you can to fight back against those things that have hurt you. I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not. I wish that she would have chosen that path to fight back against the things. She's obviously a strong person, and she doesn't have a relationship with her sister. I think her own kids. So it makes me sad for her, because I feel like she could have a more fulfilling life, but this is the choice she's made.
And I'm also thinking the same way that your biological father heard the news that you were his daughter and he later struggled with it. It's also important to recognize that she too may have struggled with your return, right? I often remind adoptees that our return to their life is a rewind to that
Yeah.
point in her life. And
Yeah.
you've said she had some trauma, she had some drama, she had some issues.
She did a lot.
So I'm really glad that she admitted that she did think about before, because now you've got the receipts so that when this vitriolic response comes later, you can go, I don't think you really know it, right? You've got a lens through which to truly see it. So
I think it's a protective thing. Her kids
yeah,
don't
she's
know about
hurt.
me.
Yeah,
And
it's
they're
not
the
about you. It's
Yeah.
about her. It's
And
about
there's a
her
lot of
life.
shame. I know there's a lot of shame. I'm just sad that she's stuck in that and
Yes,
she can't see there is a way out and that we don't have to be mother and daughter, but we can have a healthy adult relationship. She has grandchildren and great grandchildren who would love and welcome her. And that makes me sad for her, what she's missing. Oh, the
right.
other thing she told me was her being in my life and me being in her life, that neither one of us would benefit in any way from that. And I thought to myself when I read that, I thought, girl, you would. Yeah, well, I have great kids. Like you would benefit. This would be a good thing for you.
Right. But if
You can.
that's the energy you're bringing to it, you stay over there with that, right?
Yes.
Don't come over here with that. I'm with you. But before we go, I want to ask you, back to your biological father. This man has been on the phone with you and heard your voice confirm that you are paternally related. Did you go back and meet him face to face?
Oh, yes. We are very close. Very, very close.
So
And
what was your second meeting like? Now you're seeing him as your birth father, not just as an uncle.
we were already so close because they had been so willing to get to know me. And then the second time, they wanted to invite everybody to come that could come and meet me. And the funny thing is, when you've never been around people that favor you, and then you are in this big old room with all these people, and you're watching these people who are so much like you, and you're like them, it's surreal. It's so surreal. And a lot of the people that were there visiting, when they first saw me or heard me, thought I was his daughter. His
Our daughter.
Yes.
Really?
He wanted the chance to tell them himself. He broke down both times telling them. They both reacted the same way. Dad, it's okay. We love you. This doesn't change anything. Tell us about her. And I think what's really interesting too, Damon, is they both asked him the same question. And the question was, is she a follower of Christ? That was the thing they both wanted to know. And he was able to say, yes, undoubtedly.
Right.
And so for people who are not, they might understand this, but this is the best way I know to explain it. Not only are we related blood-wise, but we also share in what we believe to be the inheritance of the kingdom of Christ. So we are not only related by our blood, but by his. And that is, for me, an amazing thing, because I never prayed that I would meet my family. That was never a prayer that I had, but I always prayed that they would know him, because then I knew I would get to know them in eternity.
That's
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And we get together frequently. We celebrate holidays together. They send my kids birthday gifts and birthday cards, and they come to my daughter's baby shower. And I don't even know how to explain how that feels. My parents know when I go visit, I always tell them. I come back, I share things with them. I think it was really hard for my dad at first, but once he learned this was not a man who shirked his responsibilities, this was a man who didn't know. Now they like to hear me share stories. They love to see pictures. It is pretty remarkable how similar we are. And for me, I'll never get used to it, ever, because I didn't grow up with that. My sister in the beginning, she had 3 kids, and I've got to know that she's a safe person. I get that. But once we got to know one another, and once we were sisters, we have this relationship. She said, I've never seen Dad this happy on this level. And I love seeing you smile. I didn't know how to take that. I mean, what kind of remarkable person is she that she would see this in her father and then be willing to express it to somebody? I said, I don't even know what to say to that. I don't even know. What do you mean? Explain that to me. And she said, well, I don't really know how to explain it. I just think he always felt like something was missing. And the best thing that I can say about all of this is I know not everyone's reunions are like mine. And I'm also going to say my adoptive life wasn't perfect because I lived with imperfect people. I was not part of a perfect family. But I think the thing for all of us that has been, my husband would probably say this, my kids would probably say this if you ask them, and even my family. And I'm very close to my mother's older sister, very close to her. She knew somebody was missing. She's the only person in this equation that knew somebody was missing. I don't think any of us realized that we did have a part of us that needed and wanted the other person. We didn't even know it was there till it was given to us.
That's really cool.
It's pretty remarkable, even after 5 years for me, to realize that. I've heard people say, oh, I always had a hole in my heart, or I felt like something was missing, and I never really felt that way until I got to be with them and I was connected with them.
Yeah. Sharla, that is unbelievable. I'm really, really happy for you. And there's a light inside you. I can feel it, right? You're a very happy, energetic person. And I'm glad that this went the way that it did for you because, as you've said, the rejection could have been very tough for you.
Yes.
And you did get some of it with your biological mother.
Yes.
Sounds like you've also given her grace to understand that she has been through a challenging place and that your return has brought her back to a challenging place. If she had never left it, she's still
I don't think she ever left it. And it's a good reminder for me, honestly, when I catch myself being upset with someone or being upset about something, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be a bitter person or an angry person or an unforgiving person. Somebody that was actually on your podcast, I remember her saying, how can we be this whole person if we don't know the good and the bad parts that contributed to us being the way we are, so that we can find a way to intentionally say no to those parts of ourselves that we know are destructive parts of ourselves and guide ourselves in those positive ways.
Yeah. Sharla, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
so
being
much.
with me. I appreciate it.
And you have a really great day. I'm glad we finally got to connect.
I'm sure. Me too. Absolutely. It was good to connect with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.
Hey, it's me. Sharla was one of the many adoptees who suppressed her desire to search, admitting she was surprised to read her grade school notes that her biggest problem was being adopted. I find it interesting how many of us end up on DNA platforms without being fully aware of how powerful they can be to make family connections. It was really crazy to hear that her paternal uncle and aunt turned out to be her birth father and stepmother. Imagine being face to face with your birth parent without realizing your true genetic relationship. Sharla's birth mother sounds like she's oscillated between a variety of emotions about relinquishing her daughter so many years ago. And Sharla is right to give her space, not to press her into a relationship, while empathizing with the woman about the experiences she's been through throughout her life. You probably heard the joyful way Sharla expresses herself and the positivity with which she lives her life, choosing not to be an angry or bitter person. I love that because my belief is we can't carry other people's stress or trauma. We can help, but putting someone else's stress on your back only weighs you down too. I'm Damon Davis, and I hope you found something in Sharla's journey that inspired you, validates your feelings about wanting to search, or motivates you to have the strength along your journey to learn, who am I really?